our September 2nd special meeting of the Human Relations Commission. I just want to let the public know that on the agenda, you do have the number, but if you want to make public comment, the number that you would want to call is 312-626-6799, or a toll-free number is 888-788-0099. And I'm going to give you the ID number, and then all the information is also found on the agenda. So the web ID number is 864-1202-3373 for anybody wishing to make public comment. Shelley, do you mind calling roll, please?
Absolutely, thanks. Pat Cannon.
Present.
Chuck Grigsby.
Present.
Liz Miller.
Present.
Crystal Davis Dunn.
Present.
Carla McWhirter.
Present.
Karen Honey.
Present.
Dawson Sardar. Quentin Tyler.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting tonight?
No move, Pat Cannon.
Thank you, Pat. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Liz. All in favor of approving the agenda for tonight's meeting? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you. The agenda is approved unanimously. And we are going to, Chuck.
I just want to let you know that Dr. Tyler is having some Zoom issues. He just sent me a message, so he is going to get on as soon as he can.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. I didn't, and maybe I can double back to this, and I apologize for that. But the subcommittee for the HRC, I didn't see that on the agenda, and maybe that was with intention. Discuss with the name change and determining what the new direction would be. But anyhow,
How about you could bring that up during commissioner concerns if you'd like. Mrs. Ingram, thanks for that. I would like to start the meeting tonight by we need to elect a new chairperson. So I would actually like to open the meeting up right now to nominations for our new chair of the HRC. We all miss Talise very, very much, and we're very, it was very unfortunate that we had to say goodbye to her. And it is time to elect a new chair. So, can I entertain a motion? Would anyone like to nominate somebody for the chair of the HRC?
I would like to nominate Chuck Grigsby.
We have a nomination for Chuck Grigsby. Do we have a second? Crystal, okay, nominated by Liz Miller, seconded by Crystal Davis Dunn. All in, I guess I don't really know how this works. We vote.
You have to see if there's any other nominations.
I'm curious if Chuck has an interest in chairing the.
He has to accept the nomination, and you have to see if there's any other.
Okay. Mr. Grigsby, do you accept the nomination for chair of the HRC?
Just for FYI purposes, Commissioner Sardar is now online here as well. So
okay.
You might want to catch him up to speed where we're at.
Okay. Hey, Fasten. We just approved the agenda, and we are entertaining nominations for the new chair of the HRC. And Liz nominated Chuck, and Crystal seconded that. So we're just in the process of asking Chuck if he accepts the nomination, and then I'll be asking if there are any other nominations. Thank you all for guiding me on this. This is all new to me. So, Chuck, do you accept the nomination for chair of the Human Relations Commission? All right. Is there anybody else that would like to make a nomination for chair?
Aaron, this is where you asked that question 3 times.
Okay. I'm going to give you another chance. Is there anybody else interested in making a nomination for chair of the HRC?
Is there anyone interested in chairing the HRC?
Is there anyone interested in chairing the HRC?
We never had the discussion. I don't want to nominate someone who's not interested. I guess that's a. No.
I'm gonna judge by the silence that people are feeling comfortable with the nomination and nobody else is interested, but please speak up if you are. Another minute or so. All right, with no other nominations, do we do a roll call vote, Shelley?
Yes.
We can, absolutely. So we are voting to appoint Chuck Grigsby as chair of the HRC. Pat Cannon? Chuck Grigsby? You probably don't vote. Liz Miller?
Aye.
Crystal Davis Dunn? Crystal?
Oh, I'm on mute. Aye.
Thank you. Carla McWhirter?
Aye.
Karen Honey?
Aye.
Dawson Sardar?
Aye.
And is Quentin?
There he is.
There he
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Dr.
Sorry.
Tyler.
Perfect
Hi
timing.
there.
I vote for Chuck.
You vote for Chuck?
I
Excellent.
heard everything.
Dr. Tyler,
Thank you so much.
Dr. Tyler, did you have any interest at all? Because I know we had discussion before you got on. If you had any interest in that at all.
No, I support you.
Okay, all right. Just want to be respectful.
Excellent. It's unanimous.
All right, I'm gonna officially hand the meeting over to you, Mr. Grigsby. It is your meeting now.
Thank you. So when we move on to the next item, are we talking about the vice chair now? Would that be appropriate, or does that stay the same?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make a motion to vote on the vice chair for the HRC. Is there a second? Or at least a nomination, I should say.
How does it work?
We open the floor to nominations.
Was there a second? I didn't hear.
Crystal gave a second.
Seconded by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? Anyone who would like to nominate someone for the vice chair?
Well, why don't we start with seeing who's interested? Is there anybody interested in being vice chair?
I have interest.
Commissioner Dunn is interested in being vice chair. Is there any other people who are interested in doing that? Seeing none, can we vote now, Shelley, on the roll call vote for the vice chair?
Do we make a
We have
nomination?
a motion to nominate.
One more time.
I move to nominate Crystal Davis Dunn as vice chair.
Is there a
I
second?
second.
Seconded by Commissioner Honey. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
We'll do a roll call vote to elect Crystal Davis Dunn as vice chair of the HRC. Pat Cannon?
Aye.
Grigsby?
Aye.
Liz Miller?
Aye.
Carla McWhirter?
Aye.
Karen Honey?
Aye.
Dawson Sardar?
Aye.
Quentin Tyler?
Aye.
Unanimously approved.
Motion moved.
Congratulations. Thank you both of you.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
So
Thank you both for being willing to serve.
thank you. So before we move on to item 1.4, I just want to let you know I am a little bit rusty on my Robert's Rule, so please don't hesitate to interrupt me or correct me or fix me when it comes to procedure. I would appreciate that. Can I have a motion for approval of minutes for August 5th, 2020 HRC meeting?
Adam so moves.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Sardar. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. We'll be moving to written communications. We kind of have 2.1. Has everyone got a chance to review written communication by Nell Coolidge? She has some suggested modifications to the ordinance number 1491 East Lansing and the provision for disturbing the peace. Did everyone get a chance to review that?
Yes.
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 Okay. Any discussion about that? We will be talking about that in under old business at 5.1 in detail tonight. So, but anyone have any comments beforehand?
So I'm looking for my notes from the last meeting. I'm sorry, I'm just disciplining, but I didn't know what would be appropriate to make a motion to, since that I'm not really sure of the expertise of the commission, but given that the person who made the recommendations is a lawyer and that the city council looked over it, assuming with their legal team that we only address the line items in red, versus going it through the document in totality.
I apologize. I'm not quite sure your question. Are you trying to understand if the items in red are the items in red, from what I understand, are what the council has went through line by line and made suggestions for taking out that language, and the items in green were part of the discussion with the written communication from Nell Kumich and a couple of the commissioners that worked with her on that. Is that correct, Commissioner Miller, Commissioner Honey?
That's
my understanding.
Okay.
As well.
So my question is do I need to make a motion to ask that we go through only the modified items in red versus the entire document? Because my concern is if we make recommendations for changing it, that given that we don't necessarily have the expertise on what is appropriate or what will be lawful, that we avoid digging, ourselves in holes or creating a problem. So I was just asking if I needed to make a motion to change of how we might proceed with that item.
If I understand what you're saying, I don't think so, because the council has had a chance to really look at this information, and they had a city attorney involved, from what I understand, and the corrections and suggestions were really edits, if you will. There was really no policy change. If anything, we took things out that made it a little bit more wordy or that had double speak in the motions that they had in there. But I don't think so. I mean, we can definitely entertain that when we get to the item in the old business if you want to look at it as far as a motion then. Is that appropriate?
I yield, and I guess I make a motion to approve the move forward.
Now, Shelley, if you, I know we are set for 7:30, and we're a couple of minutes before that time, right? I don't have a clock in
I
front.
think we can move forward with public comment.
Okay, we can move forward with public comment. We have time for that. Okay, so public comment. We had kind of a continuous motion with public comment, limited to 5 minutes, just based off kind of really the entertainment of time and saving that. Pursuant to MCL 152.563, and I would like to make a motion to continue that. Is there a second?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, Chuck.
No worries. We have public comment. We have it limited to 5 minutes for public comment. We had a continuous motion doing that in the previous meeting, and I wanted to continue that practice for time's sake going forward. And I just cited where that came from. So I was asking for a second to continue that motion for 5 minute limit for public comment.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Honey.
Mr. Chair, this is Cannon. Would you elaborate on what is meant by that phrase you used about ongoing motion?
Well,
that it's always in order?
Yes, since we got back to reconvening for our meetings, we have had a 5 minute public comment limitation. And so I was just citing that we were continuing that on.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
All right. And then so that was seconded, so that's moved, so we'll continue that on. Shelley, do we have anyone on the line?
Justin is here to see us through that.
Thank you, Justin.
Yes, we do have some callers in the queue for public comment. And so the first caller is phone number ending in 291. Phone number ending in 291, you may unmute and address the commission. You may need to dial *6 in order to unmute.
Justin, will you repeat the phone number?
Thank you. I just got unmuted. I apologize. This is good evening. Mr. Chairman, members of the Human Regulations Commission, my name is Nell Kunich. I am a resident at 812 Applegate Lane in East Lansing, and I actually called in to thank you all for being willing to ask for an opportunity to review the proposed changes to the ordinance for disturbing the police, and to take some of your members took a lot of time out of their day, and I know you all do out of many days, to meet with myself and Kat Edsel and to discuss the modifications that had been proposed under my name, but really Kat Edsel and I had worked on many of them together. And we had a very fruitful and very interesting discussion. And Member Davis Dunn, I just want to assure you that there is no intent to in any way do anything that is illegal or inappropriate. I actually took time to watch very carefully the discussion that the city council had with their city attorney present. I actually modified my original proposed modifications because of some of the things I learned from the attorney. I am not giving to know that I am, in fact, a licensed attorney in Michigan, but that is not in terms of being any kind of an expert in municipal law or ordinance law. But I just wanted to assure you that these changes were an effort to try to look more fully at what was proposed. I had had conversations actually with former council member Meadows about being part of a discussion on these changes, and candidly, that was all pre-COVID. And I think what happened was the council saw a need to move forward, and they did that at a meeting that was a public meeting, but as you know, on Zoom, it's very, very challenging to get to look at things. And by the time what they discussed was made public in writing, that was the first opportunity that I, as a member of the public, even though I had had conversations before that with Meadows, even knew that discussion had been undertaken and had been engaged, and that there were in fact proposals. So I want to assure you there's nothing here that is an effort to get around what the council did. It actually was just an effort to try to have a few more eyes look at what was done. And I fully appreciate your concern. I'm sure that anything you recommend will have to be reviewed, and it's not automatic by any means that the council is going to adopt what you recommend. But I do want you to understand that it was done in tremendous good faith, and the effort was to try to look even more fully than I believe the council had the opportunity to do when they spent a significant amount of time. But it was pretty clear it was the first time any of them even had an opportunity to think through and discuss any of those issues. So that's what it was, and I want to thank all of you for your time and attention to this. I think it is a tremendously important issue, and I look forward to your recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Nell. We appreciate your work and your advocacy in supporting what we do here. We really appreciate you.
Chuck, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
No, I can.
No, I thank you, Nell. We just really appreciate you and your involvement and your advocacy in helping us do what we do here with our mandate, and we look forward to working with you more from the community perspective. Do we have another caller?
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Justin.
All right, the next caller for public comment is phone number ending in 333. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself to address the commission.
Hi, this is Chris Root. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. I don't have a detailed comment on what you're considering. I'm grateful that you're looking seriously at the changes in the definition of disorderly conduct, and I hope that this will help reduce the number of arrests in the city that are not needed. I think it's wonderful that the HRC is playing a role in trying to look at this carefully. I miss not being there. I miss this not being a public meeting where we can see each other. And I also am just really aware of the very difficult national situation that we're in that has a bearing on our work. And I just wanted to read a very brief statement that I find inspiring, that maybe will inspire you all in your work as well. It's the statement that the Milwaukee Bucks team made in Orlando, August 26th, and it's really short. It says, "The past 4 months have shed a light on the ongoing racial injustices facing our African American communities. Citizens around the country have used their voices and platforms to speak out against these wrongdoings. Over the last few days in our home state of Wisconsin, we've seen the horrendous video of Jacob Blake being shot in the back 7 times by a police officer in Kenosha, and the additional shooting of protesters. Despite the overwhelming plea for change, there has been no action. So our focus today cannot be on basketball. When we take the court and represent Milwaukee and Wisconsin, we are expected to play at a high level, give maximum effort, and hold each other accountable. We hold ourselves to that standard, and in this moment, we are demanding the same from our lawmakers and law enforcement. We are calling for justice for Jacob Blake and demanding the officers be held accountable. For this to occur, it is imperative for the Wisconsin State Legislature to reconvene after months of inaction and take up meaningful measures to address issues of police accountability, brutality, and criminal justice reform. We encourage all citizens to educate themselves, take peaceful and responsible action, and remember to vote on November 3rd. The reason I wanted to read this is I think it's such a wonderful statement of all of us needing to be accountable for what we are able to do, whether it's being part of a basketball team or being part of government commission. It's so related to the work of the HRC that I wanted to raise it and say that I appreciate the commitment that you all have. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Again, you have been doing work in the community for a long period of time. That's not only motivating, it's very powerful. So we really appreciate your input and your continued work going forward. Do we have any other callers?
No, we do not have any additional public comments at this time.
All right. We are just a little ahead of schedule, if you will. I just wanted to make a comment that I know in our previous meeting that we had, a caller.
Chuck, I cannot hear you well. I don't know if others can.
I think the volume is going in and out.
Can you hear me now?
You're back. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's just I'm a soft-spoken person, and I just kind of do that. My wife gives me a hard time about that all the time, so I apologize with that. No, I was just mentioning that in the previous meeting that we had, a caller had made a reference to the closed captioning. That when we get into our work a little bit later on, that we kind of really mention our name when we make suggestions or input, so the closed caption can accurately keep track of who's speaking and who is doing what on that. So I just want to remind you of that.
We do have Dr. Green and the attendee list if we're ready to move to that portion of the agenda.
All right, we'll move to item 2.3 and welcome our special guest, Dr. Green, to our HRC meeting. Dr. Green, are you there? You might have to unmute your phone if you are muted. Oh, there he is. Great. Hello, Dr. Green. Can you hear us? We'll give Dr. Green a second or two to just kind of get situated with his technology here. I don't know if he's calling in to someone else doing his business or if he's trying to get through our other way of communication.
Muted too. Elaine, I see you talking.
I think Elaine is talking.
Okay. Okay. We're still ahead of schedule, everyone, so no fret there.
You guys need to leave about an extra 15 minutes for technology issues these days.
Dr. Green is having some trouble with his audio, so he's going to log out and try to come back in so that his audio is functioning.
Thank you.
Excuse me, who was just speaking?
Elaine Hardy.
Thank you.
We got a lot going on in this meeting. We got this huge ordinance. We got a new liaison. We got Dr. Green on the line. I mean, it's fantastic problem to have. A lot going on.
Perhaps he could keep his video on and call in.
Okay, here we go. I think I got it now. Hello, so I'll start talking. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, Dr. Green. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, this technology. Hang the phone now, Dad. All right. Wait, you saying I should hang this up? Yeah, you don't need your phone on. All right. Okay. Can you see me and hear me?
Loud and clear, sir.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Welcome to the HRC.
Yes, thank you so very much, and thank Elaine Hardy for asking me to participate. I'll do whatever I can to be helpful.
Yes, I think Mrs. Hardy was going to just speak a little bit about you, and then we were just going to flow in and just go from there, if that's okay.
Oh, that's fine. Perfect.
Thank you.
I have a short bio because there's no way we'd be here all night if we tried to talk about all the work that Dr. Green has done. Robert L. Green, who holds a PhD in educational psychology from Michigan State University and a BA and an MA from San Francisco State College, is a former president of the University of the District of Columbia and
and former Dean of the College of Urban Development at Michigan State University. With the support of Ambassador Young, Dr. Green worked for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as the Education Director of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference from 1965 to 1967. Dr. Green has successfully related his writing and research to solve society's most pressing social, political, economic, and racial issues. His research and practice have focused on the impact of poverty and discrimination on urban minority populations. He is a national and international expert on expectations and how it affects student achievement. At Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s request, Dr. Green and the late Hosea Williams provided leadership for the 1966 March Against Fear in the state of Mississippi. The shooting of James Meredith initiated this march. After the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Green and his wife Letty, as well as his three sons, Vince, Kurt, and Kevin, spent a significant amount of time with Dr. King's widow, Coretta Scott King, and their children, Bernice, Dexter, Martin III, and the late Yolanda King. The Greens made every effort to help Mrs. Coretta Scott King and her children adjust to the loss of their dad. Dr. Green's latest book, The Crossroads of Fear and Freedom, The Fight for Educational and Social Justice, focuses on his academic work nationally and internationally and his involvement with the civil rights movement with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Green has dedicated his life to helping others deal with fear, a lesson he learned personally from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Recently, Dr. Green received the King Center's 2018 Christine King Ferris Legacy of Service Award. He was honored with this award to recognize his dedication and faithful service to the support of the King Legacy and the King Center. Currently, Dr. Green is Dean and Professor Emeritus and Distinguished Alumni of Michigan State University. He and his wife Letty currently reside in Virginia. And that is a brief bio for Dr. Green. It's good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, and sorry about the difficulty we had connecting, but I'll try to make up for it and give you as much time as you need. The commission, I say, as much time as you need. Thank you.
You're quite welcome, sir.
Well, I guess I'll open it up for you, Dr. Green, if you don't mind. I was doing some personal research on my own. This is Chair Chuck Grigsby, by the way. I was doing some research on my own, independent of this, and I was getting ready for Black History Month, and I wanted to do a local Black History Month celebration of some people who've been doing some things here in our community. And, I knew the name, but then once I started getting the research done, I was really just humbled to know that you were on the first commission of the HRC as a young man way back in 63, I believe. And I just was just really humbled because I know during that time you guys were dealing with some issues and the environment was even more so strong here. And I guess my question to you is, based on the time now, then in the time now, do you have any advice or suggestions or comments about the current HRC and what we could really focus in on?
Thank you so very much for that question. Times have changed, and the work of the commission might be even more challenging today than it was years ago, because as I recall, when I finished my PhD at Michigan State University, I did anticipate some difficulty buying a home once I was offered a job there. I did not know the magnitude of the difficulty, but I knew there would be difficulty. I would like to say, too, that as a young man, I think I finished my PhD. You can fact check me if you want. I think I finished my PhD when I was about 26 or 27. I was well aware of racial discrimination. I was not naive. And to give you an example, when I finished my PhD in 63, there was discrimination in East Lansing. You couldn't buy a home there. Blacks could not. As a matter of fact, black students had difficulty renting a room across the street from the university. and they would often come to my office to seek help. There was not a lot I could do at the time, young faculty member. But I was aware of the fact that there was discrimination in the housing area at that time. I might say too that when I finished when I finished my master's in psychology at San Francisco State College, it was difficulty getting a job. I applied to 5 school districts. I was the first Black to be certified as a school psychologist, I should say, probably in the country. And I couldn't get a job. I applied for a position as a school psychologist in San Francisco, San Diego, the liberal Berkeley, and 5 districts. Couldn't get a job. So when I got involved in seeking employment in East Lansing after finishing my PhD, it wasn't a young, naive person who was not aware of discrimination. I was aware of discrimination at the time. When I could not buy a home in East Lansing, I began to look around. And I did have 2 or 3 job offers. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
I had a job offer from Boston University in Boston, of course. And I went to John Hanna, and I told President Hanna, John Hanna was president of the university at that time. And he was aware of the difficulty I had locating a home. And he said, well, just keep trying. When I had the job offer at BU Boston University, I was seriously thinking of moving there to Boston with my 3 little kids and my wife. And I went to see John Hanna to let him know that I was thinking of leaving. And he said, no, young man, don't leave East Lansing. He said, what I'll do, I'll buy a home for you. You won't have the hassle of looking for a house and resell it to you. And I didn't hesitate. I told Mr. Hanna that I was very appreciative of his offer, but I said to him the next African American or next minority would have the same difficulty that I'm faced with, and I didn't want to do that. So he said, well, think about it, because I'm prepared. There was a professor by the name of Dave Dixon over in the English department, and it was my understanding that a white professor bought a home for he and his wife Vera and then resold it to them. That might have been where John Hanna got the idea. I don't know. But anyway, about that time, and as I said, please feel free to fact check me because this has been years and years ago. I was aware of the fact that John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the president, had signed an anti-housing discrimination bill. It was a national bill, of course. And I think that was around November of 1962. So I got an attorney and I filed suit against 2 or 3 realtors in the Lansing area at that time, because I had tried to buy a home on Durand Street. You know all these streets, of course. Bessemer Drive, and we eventually attempted to buy a home in Shore Estates. So I was getting discouraged, and that's one of the things, when you think of young people today who are in the streets fighting discrimination in a nonviolent way, I can understand in my old age how they can become frustrated, how they can become concerned about the level of the discrimination and wonder, will this ever stop? I didn't think that things would automatically change when I got a PhD. A black man with a PhD at that time was kind of rare, but I didn't think that all discrimination that I had been faced with in the past would disappear. So I did one other thing. I had colleagues who were on the faculty. These are African American men and women at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, Ohio State, Columbus, Indiana University. And I got on the phone and I began to call them and I asked this question. Have you all been faced with housing discrimination in your town in Ann Arbor? I knew nothing about Ann Arbor really. And they had all been faced with the same problem that I was faced with. So I began to understand that there was not necessarily a relationship between open-mindedness and discrimination. Because, I was in a university town. I wasn't trying to speaking of West Lansing, I was told by one realtor that I should buy a home in West Lansing. In my position, I had nothing to do with no concern about that. I said, but I work in East Lansing and I would like to live in East Lansing. So that was the position I took. But my colleagues at these other universities all face the same problem. When they got their PhDs or when they were offered a job, they just couldn't, they were not allowed to buy. I want to mention the name of realtors because some of the realtors, I think they're all dead. I'm not saying they're dying because they didn't sell me a home. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying, it's been a long time ago. And as I reflected on that today and putting together a few notes for this commission, I became well aware, and I'm repeating myself, that there was not necessarily a relationship between an educated community and non-discrimination. Simply because East Lansing was a college town, that did not mean you would be treated fairly. Because some of the more active, vocal people who were in favor of housing discrimination against minorities were on the faculty at the university. And I got to know some of them. Some of my white colleagues who were very liberal would whisper to me, so-and-so who's a professor over there in English department or so-and-so a professor in biology, they are putting pressure on the realtors to not sell to blacks. Now, that was kind of a shock to me because, again, as I said, I had to learn that simply being having a PhD, simply living in a university town did not mean you would be free and not faced with racial discrimination. As I said, John Hannah was a good man in a lot of respects, but John Hannah was kind of reluctant to take on the real estate industry in East Lansing. I found out later on why. And therefore, that made it additionally difficult for a black on the faculty to find housing. John Hannah wanted to handle it in a very quiet, sophisticated way. And there is no quiet and sophisticated way to fight racism. You have to fight racism head on, I discovered. And so, as I said, and I'll take a break here and let you all ask some questions. My job was to try to find a home comfortable for my wife and 3 kids, and not be faced with day-to-day discrimination while looking at ways to find a home. Let me say that there were some good whites in East Lansing. I can mention the good one, John Dooley. You might know that name, John and Betty Dooley fought to open up housing in East Lansing for blacks. There were some on the university faculty who stood up. Wilbur Brookover, some of you may know him. He's deceased now, distinguished professor of sociology. He went out and pressured people, realtors, to make sure that they didn't discriminate against young black faculty members when they were looking for one. Okay, I've been talking a lot. Let me slow down and take any questions that you might have. I'll answer them to the best of my ability.
Commissioner Dunn.
Hi, I'm Dr. Green. Thank you for joining us today. You started to get at the formation or why the Human Relations Commissions became necessary.
Okay.
And I was reviewing the original ordinance that was adopted by the city, and I was just curious about how did that, I don't know if you were hinting at that the work stemmed from African Americans' inability to purchase a home here, but I know some of the duties here was about investigating the relations amongst interracial groups and other cultural groups here, but I'm curious about what was the original commission of the HRC, and was it formulated around housing discrimination, and from there, what work were you guys able to achieve while you were a member?
I think the original goal and objective of the Human Relations Commission was to deal with housing discrimination. I think that the factor related to that, but there were a lot of liberal white students who became aware of housing discrimination, and there were protests. The protests were being done both by black and white students. White students and black students played the major role in putting pressure on the city of East Lansing to open up or to deal with realtors who were discriminating against blacks seeking housing. So, yes, you're absolutely right. Our first really concern was to open the city up. So blacks who were on the faculty seeking housing could find housing without direct and deliberate discrimination. President John Hanna was a good man, but he was always reluctant for some reason to take on the real estate industry in the town. Realtors were very powerful, very influential, and they would speak up for what they wanted. They would come to commission meetings to speak up in favor of keeping East Lansing safe, as they would say, as they said at the time, safe. And it's interesting that's being said again today, that we got to keep our community safe. So again, yes, housing discrimination was the big issue, and I would come to commission meetings and would speak up, and I had colleagues who would support me, but I had colleagues who were quiet as well. Okay.
Commissioner Honey, please.
Okay.
Commissioner Honey, please go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Green. My name is Karen Honey, and I just want to thank you so much. It's such an honor to have you join us. I wanted to just share a nice anecdote with you. I previously to my time on the commission, I served on the school board in East Lansing. We had a middle school student named Alex Hosey, and I don't know if you ever followed the story of Alex Hosey, but your story about your challenge to buy a house in East Lansing inspired him. And he really rose up and kind of started a movement and got the city of East Lansing to apologize for its history of redlining, and also worked with the East Lansing School Board and the history department at the high school to add the history of redlining in East Lansing to our curriculum. And I'm no longer on the school board, but that is now part of the curriculum of the East Lansing Public Schools. And I think that your story has a lot to do with that. And
well,
you know,
I remember Hosey. I met him, the young man. He was a high school student, I think, and I met him and his father last year when I was on campus for a meeting, and I was pleased to meet them. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention.
I'm so glad you had the chance to meet them. Another just personal anecdote I wanted to tell you is in the late 60s and 70s, my father worked for you at the Center for Urban Affairs at Michigan State. His name was Alan Hurwitz. I don't know if you remember him.
Al Hurwitz.
Yeah, that's my father.
Hurwitz.
That's right.
Al left, and I think he moved away somewhere, but I knew Al Hurwitz very well. He and Judy Leeper fought housing discrimination and all other forms of discrimination in East Lansing at that time. Yes, I knew your dad very well.
He did. We moved to Detroit after that, and then back to East Lansing again. And he fought his whole life fighting for civil rights, and was he unfortunately he passed away this June from COVID. But he would have been so tickled to know that you came to this meeting. I hope that he knows that somehow. But I just wanted to share that story with you. And he was always just I knew about you my whole life. He always talked about his boss, Dr. Bob Green. So yeah, you were a big inspiration to him. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. I just want to say that when I watched the demonstrations today in cities throughout the country, in which young people are working, fighting to overcome discrimination, it reminds me of my days at Michigan State. And, you know, I think what we sometimes have difficulty understanding, those who are not African American or Hispanic for that matter, is how discrimination gnaws at you, how it eats at you. And if you have to spend your time fighting racial discrimination, you have less time to work on the good things that are important in life, like making sure that the schools are good and safe, and that your kids are doing well academically. Those are the real issues that count. And so I reflect a lot on my experience. I don't ever regret, by the way, and that's just taking a job at Michigan State. But I was prepared to leave to find employment so I could take care of my family. Okay.
Thank you. Please, Elaine Hardy.
All right, I'll take another question.
Please, Elaine, please go ahead.
So Dr. Green, I want to kind of take you back a little ways, and for you to share with us the work that you did with the Southern Christian Leadership Council. What exactly did the Director of Education do? And then can you share the story about when you met Ambassador Green and talk about a little bit about that relationship?
I was hired by Martin Luther King Jr. To head up its education program. And when it was non-traditional education, non-traditional in the sense that blacks were put to the task of given challenges that were unreal. For example, I recall in Grenada, Mississippi, they said, "You're not educated if you couldn't tell how many bubbles are in a bar or soap." Things like that. Things that no one could really answer. But I was asked to, Martin Luther King Jr. called me in when I agreed to take a leave from Michigan State and said he wanted me to work in the area of voter registration. So I worked with Andy Young, Hosea Williams, C.T. Vivian, a bunch of old timers. So, as a matter of fact, the only one that's alive that I just mentioned is Andy Young. And he told me to be sure. I told him I was speaking tonight to the commission. He said, "Please let the commission know that I'm still alive." So, so Andrew Jackson Young is still with us. And I just want to say that housing discrimination, voter registration was a big issue in the South at the time. Now, I recall one incident in which Martin Luther King Jr. And Andy Young met with Lyndon Baines Johnson when he was president. I was not in the meeting. I will always say when I was in the meeting or not. I was not in that meeting. But I was there. And what happened basically was that voter registration was the issue in the South. And again, Lyndon Baines Johnson said, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll pass a voting rights bill. I know I can get that passed. And blacks will be able to vote and get the bad guys. And at the time, they were guys. Get them out of office. And that's what basically happened. Lyndon Baines Johnson was a Southerner who had a lot of clout politically. And he respected the leadership and the toughness of Martin Luther King Jr. And King said, okay. And they went ahead and worked at it, getting people registered to vote. And from that point on, I think things began to change somewhat. I think there's something else. I was sharing this with my wife today. It's amazing how change occurs because a lot of the cities where blacks were faced with severe discrimination, they now have black leadership. Well, they always had black leadership, black mayors. I believe Birmingham, Alabama has a black mayor. I know Selma, Alabama has a black mayor. The meanest place I always thought in the South was Grenada, Mississippi. And the sheriff there was Suggs Ingram, I-N-G-R-A-M. Suggs has been dead for about 4 years. Suggs, it was rumored that he had killed or assassinated 5 or 6 or 7 black men. I never really was able to verify that, and I don't want to say that. But it was situations like that which we had to overcome. And Dr. King felt that voting those guys out of office was the best way to go. And so King pushed Lyndon Baines Johnson for a voting rights bill, and they eventually got it. Okay.
Wow, thank you. Are there any other questions from any other commissioners? Seeing none. Dr. Green, that's so much to unpack. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay. So much to unpack. And we just, as the HRC now here in 2020, really appreciate your input and your history, your brief history that you gave us. Because we know there's, like Elaine Hardy said, there's quite a bit there for us to spend a lot of time on. And we're at the anniversary of when the HRC was established, and 57 years ago, and in September. So we were right on track, and I just really appreciate you. I think it's been a great honor for all of us to have a moment in time with you, and just to be able to kind of put things in perspective and just continue the work, and just be motivated by the legacy that you have represented and presented to the world, to be honest with you. And we just really all thank you.
Well, there were a lot of good people. I never would want to take the sole credit for focusing on a critical issue such as housing discrimination. There were a lot of good people, like Al Hurwitz, one example, as an example. There were a lot of good people who put their lives and reputations on the line to make sure that East Lansing would become a better place. And it has become, I think, a better place. And if you ever run across a young attorney by the name of Robert Vincent Green, that's my son. Tell him that he should thank me and his mama for raising him in East Lansing, and that he still owes us.
Mrs. Hardy, did you have something else you wanted to say?
I did. I had a couple of things. For those of you who might have an interest, the house that Dr. Green purchased is at 207 Bessemer.
Yes, that's
we
correct.
We really are working to pull some things together so that we can do something to commemorate that time in East Lansing's history. And I also wanted to share that Dr. Green, his latest book, At the Crossroads of Fear and Freedom, is a beautifully written academic walk through civil rights and educational justice. For those of you who have an interest, it has beautiful photographs. He has been very too modest today to share the amazing things that he did for our country, for educational justice and for civil rights. He remained a close confidant and friend to Coretta Scott King, and really marshaled and worked with her with the King Center. Her kids call him Uncle Bobby. So he, again, is just too modest about his contributions and the time that he spent working to improve the status of education for African Americans throughout this country. And so, Dr. Green, I just wanted to just tell you thank you. And
Thank you.
You know, if you were here, I'd give you a big old kiss on the cheek and tell you thank you again. And,
Thank you, Elaine Hardy. Thank you.
And please tell Ambassador Young that we miss him and that we are looking forward to seeing him again.
Okay, I told Andy Young, we spoke today, we talk at least maybe 2 or 3 times a week, that we together will have to go back to East Lansing.
Yes.
Because together. And he said, we'll work it out.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Okay.
I'm glad. Thank you
so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Green. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Take care.
Thank you.
Wow. All right. Wow, that was amazing. Let's move on to item 3.1, City Council liaison comments.
Yeah, just want to get up to speed with you guys. Just congratulations on all your hard work, and I'm excited to work with you guys. Obviously, I appreciate the work of the Human Relations Commission. I think it's really amazing the time that we're in and the types of issues we're getting to work on. There was a little bit different time when I was on the commission. The issues were different. I think this is really the time. You're in the moment in time where you can really make an impact. You have a lot of inertia around the issues of human relations and human rights, and I think you're in a really good position here, and you should seize it and really work on the important issues facing East Lansing and the nation. So congratulations, and I look forward to working with you and supporting you in any way possible moving forward.
Thank you so much. Do any commissioners have any questions for Councilman Bacon by chance? All right, seeing none. Did you have one, Vice Chair Dunn?
No, thank you for my letters.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move to item 3.2, staff reports or staff updates from Shelley and Elaine by chance.
Just welcome to Ron. It's a pleasure to have you back. He served on the HRC for 2 terms, I believe. So it's great to see him back, and we welcome you, Ron. I have nothing else for the commission. I can turn it over to Elaine.
Thank you. Elaine, please.
Thank you. I feel like I've talked a lot already. I just want to just give you an update on kind of where we are in our process to begin our cultural realignment. We're finalizing our contract with the Truth and Titus Collective. They're going to be actually beginning a climate survey in the next couple of weeks within the city of East Lansing. We're going to work with our DEI group to kind of work through the information that they're asking for to help inform our process for training. And then we're going to begin in October with scheduling the training for our leadership. So we're going to start going through our process in person in October, beginning with our council and our executive team. And Shelley, I didn't know if you wanted to mention, but Shelley did. She does have police chief interviews scheduled. So looking forward to that process as well. So that's all I have.
Thank you. I believe that's on the 15th. I know Commissioner Miller had asked that in the last meeting about when that was going to be. So yeah, that's going to be on the 15th, I believe, of this month. They'll have the first round of interviews for that.
17th.
Oh, 17th?
What's the 15th is the community interviews, and then the 17th will be the second phase.
So we're both right. All right. All right. Moving on. If there's nothing else. Okay. Moving on. Yeah.
With the assessment your guys doing in relation to kind of the climate, assuming you're speaking to cultural climate or racial equity issues, and the training moving forward for city staff or the government here, is that in inclusion of like commissions and the new task force or work committee around evaluating or the police oversight? Are all the commissions and something involved or would be involved in the training once that is formalized?
So we had not reached that far out into the city organization to include volunteer commissions. Council is included, but that certainly is a matter that we can consider. But we had not included that group in this original or beginning process for training.
Okay, I think it's important, given that we do assess people's aptitude or capacity to really understand what social justice, racial equity is, and making sure that they have some framework to work on, both within the local government and the appointed or volunteer. So I just want to mention that. So but thank you for your work.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your input, Vice Chair Dunn. Is there any other follow-up questions for staff liaisons? All right, moving to item 4 on the agenda, commissioner concerns. I'll open it up if anyone has any concerns or updates or comments.
Earlier I mentioned, I believe Commissioner Tyler had requested in an earlier meeting about forming a subcommittee to look into redefining what the name change will mean and what our new objectives will be. And I did not see that on the agenda. And I just wanted to see if there was interest in that formation of a subcommittee as we move forward with a name change and realigning our focus.
And I believe the name change was not added based off just our overall time, but it's not something that we were getting away from, just with the ordinance that we had to like focus on tonight, and then the police follow-up questions that we had to formulate on that. It's definitely something that I think if you don't mind, Vice Chair, is something we can throw onto the next agenda, and we can certainly entertain a motion if you want to create a subcommittee in regards to that. That's certainly up to you to do that if that's something that you feel would be appropriate for that process. Okay. Any other commissioners have anything, updates, questions, or concerns?
We have a vacancy now, correct?
Correct, we do.
Oh, I just wanted to throw that out there that we can, maybe, I don't know what the process to move forward, but it'd be nice to be back to a 9-person commission. So public, anybody that's listening, that we have a vacancy on the HRC now. So
any other comments or questions from any commissioners before I go?
I just have an update. I had a meeting with Rose Vedanis. She's a commissioner on Media Township's Environmental Commission. And we talked about environmental racism, how it disproportionately affects certain marginalized communities. And this is sort of an ignored or not so much awareness about this topic. So if something tangible comes out of it, I'll be happy to share with you in the coming weeks or months.
Thank you, Commissioner Sardar. Any other updates, comments, or questions?
I do. I have a few questions, and I guess just to throw that out there, and maybe I'll make a motion for it to be added to another agenda. but when I was reviewing my binder, it was a bit unclear to me about what constitutes as for quorum for the HRC. There are various, I guess, ordinances in there that talks about different numbers. And I believe, from what I was told by commissioners, that it was 3 that constitutes a quorum. And I was really confused about that because I thought it was.
Chris,
Go ahead, Shelley, please.
so a quorum would be 5 when we have an HRC full commission of 9.
Okay.
Quorum is 5.
Okay.
With 8, it would also be 5.
Okay, because there was concern about the subcommittees of only having 3, because that would constitute as quorum. And so, is that incorrect?
That would be, we could have up to 4, I believe. I will double check, but I believe there could be 4 on a subcommittee. If we had a full commission, right?
Yeah, that's what my next question was, because we're at 8. So that, and since I've been on, we've always been 1 short, and so I think that's where the 3 came from. And then, so as we get fully locked, I think the 4 is what I was, I had did some research on this because I was, Shelley, I emailed you about kind of really understanding, the Open Meetings Act and just kind of making sure that we were able to communicate effectively as a commission. And the more people we can get involved with doing subcommittees and things of that nature, that would be appropriate for us to kind of really understand what the rules are, what to do when it comes to not violating the Open Meetings Act. Just, as everyone knows, did anyone else did you have another question or concern, Vice Chair Dunn?
My only other concern, and I apologize, I lost all the notes that I had written from the previous meeting regarding reviewing our bylaws and making sure that everyone is up to speed in the formulation of our subcommittees. And as well as it ties into the other motion of forming that subcommittee for the name change and creating some type of strategic plan and objective moving forward. That's all I have.
Thank you. Moving on, I just, I wanted to touch on the OMA, Open Meetings Act, and I know that we are pretty much comprehensive of what that is. And I just want to remind, I know that our previous chair really wanted to make sure that our email chains and links did not go past the subcommittee amount and number. So if you do have some information or you want to communicate to the whole commission, I would recommend you send that to Shelley, and she will distribute that appropriately to the commission. Is that okay, Shelley? Is that how that process works? Yes. So we'll continue to do that. Same thing with any other forms of media outlets, text, and things of that nature. Just please be mindful of that as we grow into what we're going to do forward as a commission, and get into some really heavy issues when it comes to some things we'll be doing. We want to make sure we don't open ourselves up to any litigation or any violations to that, and have it be where we're doing anything in secrecy, because I believe that some of the things we will be tackling would be subject to people to try to make sure that we are abiding by the Open Meetings Act. But I just wanted to comment on that real quickly. The other thing I wanted to bring to our attention is that as a commission way back in January or February, we had talked about the annual police review report from the deputy chief of police, and just kind of really change that to 6 months. And so I just wanted to kind of make sure we get back to maybe thinking about that, because it's been quite some time since we've had an opportunity to have that conversation. And possibly as we work on these follow-up questions a little bit later on the agenda, we can maybe talk about maybe how we can go forward with that, because I do know we did, I think, vote or had a strong consensus to changing that to having a representative come in every 6 months. Does anyone remember that conversation?
I do, and I think you're correct.
Okay.
We talked about quarterly and we talked about biannually.
Yeah, quarterly too. It was quarterly. So I don't
know if we settled on anything, but I know that there was a consensus that we wanted them to come more than once a year. And then COVID hit and everything just kind of spiraled after that, which is why it's now been 7 months, unfortunately.
Yeah. And maybe this is, a more appropriate situation to kind of focus on going on, but I just want to make sure that I put that seed in your mind's head now as we work on these questions, and we'll have an opportunity to possibly maximize the time that we do get from the very busy chief or the representative that's going to be coming forward with that information. And that's all I had. So we're going to be moving on to, did you have something to say, Commissioner Honey? Okay. All right. Moving on to item 5, old business, 5.1. We're going to be going into reviewing and the recommendations changes for the ordinance 1491, East Lansing ordinance. And as you know, we do have quite a bit of attention already put into this. And I really want to maximize the time appropriately as we go through this very big document. And I hope everyone has had a chance to review it thoroughly. So when you do make a comment or you do have input, it can be something that we can kind of really process rather quickly. I will open it up to the question because I was not a part of the oversight ordinance and the stuff that you guys had did, I think, way back in December. And you were working on that for quite a bit. And I know we had that 4-hour meeting that I luckily missed. And I just want to ask a couple of clarifying questions in how you went about that. Did you go about it line for line? Did you have a motion to kind of look at it in a certain kind of way? Can you help me out with how that was done in a way that, or could be done in a way that's a little bit more effective?
So that, I'm happy to speak to that if that's okay for folks who are there. That was that was an ordinance that we crafted ourselves. The city council had given us an ordinance saying, do you want to recommend this, make a recommendation, and we said no. And then we took a few months to craft a totally different version of that. And so the going line through line was partly because that was our work that we were checking and agreeing on, rather than approving. And I would not recommend that method for this. If we've all had time to review it, if there are questions or if there are specific things that people have concerns about, maybe you could just open it up that way, and then maybe we could either make changes if people have edits, or approve or don't recommend going forward, or I don't know. It might be a little more expedient.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Liz. I would also suggest, Chuck, could you just tell the entire commission the process of how you arrived at this document?
Yes, I arrived at this document not by myself. Commissioner Miller and Commissioner Honey and members of the public, Nell and Kat, were very instrumental in allowing us to be able to sit down with them and work through the language. And so, as I said earlier, in your document that you're looking at now, in the agenda, everything that is in green are what we came to agreement on in our subcommittee unofficially to edit out the language. So everything that's crossed out in green is the suggestions that we're making. And please correct me if I misspeak, Commissioner Miller or Commissioner Honey, on that. And so we kind of narrowed it down a little bit because there was some language in there that kind of really was double speak. There was a little bit of overindulgence in really the openness of the discretion. And so we kind of wanted to narrow that down a little bit with respect to everything in red that the council went through line by line, I might say, with their attorney. And these were their suggestions they had already made that we're looking at now. So everything that you see in red that's crossed out is not the decision that we made, it's the decision the council made. And everything again in green is the suggestions that we have. So as you see, item number 1, it's all crossed out because we narrowed it down and put a lot of that information into the other sections. So like number 1, for example, was reserved. So that's how to look at it. Are there any questions about that?
Yeah, can you, so does the reserve mean that it was just stricken or removed from the ordinance?
Correct. So maybe I'm not the best one to explain how that works. But when it's reserved, it means that instead of like changing all the numbers in this ordinance and it really being a real mess because we were making those changes, what the protocol is to go ahead and just reserve that spot. So there's still the number one, and so all the other numbers stay in play. So there's not so much of that change when it comes to that order of the language. Is that a fair way to say it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was a recommendation of the East Lansing city attorney with the assumption that officers who are enforcing this ordinance have each of those numbers memorized or are knowledgeable about what the content in that is.
Any other general questions before we get started?
I just want to say that I'm comfortable because as Chair Grigsby mentioned, we did meet and I gave a lot of input, so I'm very comfortable with Chair Grigsby, Commissioner Miller speaking on my behalf. I've given my input to this, and the changes that you see were recommended by me, so I'm going to just kind of stay quiet and let folks that have not yet had a chance to speak on this offer their thoughts. But when we had talked about how this was going to go, we were hoping people would come ready with edits or to say, yeah, this looks good, versus going line by line. So I am in complete agreement with that plan.
So I think what I'll do, if everyone's comfortable with it, I'll just point out the numbers of the ordinance and just give a moment for anyone who has input on that, with the changes that are on there. And go by it for that, and then towards the end there we can kind of just have that one motion to approve and advise to the council. Does that sound okay? Yes, Councilman Bacon.
Yeah, just to get me completely up to speed, I'm about intentionality. Ultimately, what's the ultimate? This was generated from council down to the commission, and you guys are working through it. Ultimately, what's the end game? What's some more simplicity for the end user of the code? What's your end game? Give me the 2-minute version.
Any commissioners want to speak on that question?
Liz, I don't know if you have more insight given that.
Endgame, I would see the endgame would be for us to make a recommendation to be able to recommend this ordinance for council to pass it, knowing that it has been looked at with the lens of equity, and particularly racial equity, in the language. Does that?
I would agree with that 100%. I think a little bit of what we wanted to also address is some of the over policing issues that have existed in our community, and some of the language and some of the way that this was written. It allowed a lot of discretionary loose ends, if you will. And so we just wanted to tighten up that language a little bit. And as the council got a chance to look through it, we wanted to also look through it, like Commissioner Miller had said, with our lens, and just really narrow this down a little bit. So it's just something that is straightforward as best we can, because you can't really do too much with discretionary decisions out in the field too much when it comes to that, because you got to leave a little bit of that open for people to do their work. But we wanted to make sure that we were protecting our community and have that public safety language or focus in, as far as what I think what the end game would be with this work that we've been doing on this.
Thank you.
No problem.
And also with the motive of minimizing unwarranted arrests or stoppages.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on and jump right into this. I don't think it'll be as arduous as I think we were coming into this, so hopefully I'm right about that. I know you all have had a chance, or you're looking at the document now, and I'll start with item 1. What you see there is everything in green that is crossed out, and we have reserved that item there. Are there any discussions to that proposal as far as that edit? Concerns, questions? All right, moving on to item 2. Item 2, you do see there, and I don't know if it's appropriate for me to read it, but what we left in there that's not crossed off is willfully expose one's buttocks or genitalia in public place. And that's it for item 2. Any questions, discussions?
No.
Okay. Item 3, as you can see there in plain language, discharge any firearms, air rifle, slingshot, nor shall any person have any air rifle or slingshot in their possession in any street or park except the same be securely wrapped or encased. And as you see there in red, that is an amendment or a change that was done by the council. Any questions, concerns, or discussion about item number 3?
Mr. Chair, this is Pat Cannon.
Yes, please go ahead.
I was trying to catch you on the previous item we were looking at. When that was being discussed and deliberated by that work group, and I thank you for doing that, was there any discussion as to how breastfeeding would play into this?
There was discussion. Please, Commissioner Miller, can you help me out on that?
Yeah, the original language included a woman's breast, and that was something that was taken out. So that breastfeeding could not be policed, less likely.
But Liz, later in the document, it does mention give the woman their breasts as well.
That, I think, has also been stricken. Is that in 10D or 10C?
I am not recalling. I read it a couple of times.
Yeah, I was reading it with the same lens, and I believe that all the mentions of female breasts have been stricken from the recommendations in this document.
And also, in the interest of full disclosure, I could not discern which was red or green or black, but it's okay. I think the conversation helps me put that in perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you able, just had a clarifying question, are you able to discern between what's crossed out and what's not crossed out?
Sometimes, but I wouldn't count on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Commissioner.
Pat, and please, we apologize, and please, any questions that you need to ask for clarification, please don't hesitate to ask. I apologize that that's something that.
I will work on not being shy. Thank you.
I don't think that's an issue, Commissioner Cannon. And that was my intention, to make sure that I said the green, the red as I go through this, to make sure hopefully it's not lost in translation there. So please interrupt as you normally do if you have a question, Commissioner Cannon. All right, so we're going to move on to item number 3, I believe we're on. Or excuse me, item number 4. And what we have is in the language is engage in peeping in the windows of any inhabited place or prowl about the private premises of any other person without authority or the permission of the owner of such premises. Any questions, discussions about item number 4?
No.
All right, moving on. Number 5 is reserved. Commissioner Tyler, were you about to say something? Okay. All right. Number 5 is reserved. Is everyone okay with that? All right. Moving on to item number 6, which is also reserved. And the reason, I guess, real briefly, some of these are reserved because it's being addressed in other parts of the ordinance. So that's kind of really where that comes from. Or it was something that was repeated in a way that didn't make any sense. So that's kind of how we got those reserved statuses. All right, moving on to item number 7. Physically accost any person in any public place with the intent to abuse that person. Period. So I'll repeat that because that's a little bit physically accost any persons in any public place with the intent to abuse that person.
Mr. Chair?
Please, go ahead, Commissioner Cannon.
Did you have a discussion on how we're defining abuse here?
I don't remember having a specific discussion about abuse. Did you have a question or clarification that you wanted us to kind of see or understand?
No, I think the word abuse is subject to interpretation by probably 10 individuals might define it differently. That's all. But I understand the intent of the language.
Vice Chair Dunn.
Oh yeah, with regard, because as I was looking at it, in the intent to interfere with was removed, and I think that is important I would like that to be added, so that it leaves less subjectivity to abuse, because I think that harassment or any type of interference with a person.
If you don't mind, can you read the language as you were making the suggestion fully, the sentence, please?
Okay, physically accost any person in any public place with intent to interfere or abuse that person.
I think that the reason, when we discussed it, the reason we took out interfere with, and this is totally open for discussion, but what if I recall Liz and Chuck, let me know if I'm incorrect, but we kind of felt that interfere with was very vague, and that's part of the reason we took it out. I agree that abuse is still vague. We didn't want to strike the entire thing. We were trying to leave some of the original, but I think most of the language in this particular item is open for interpretation. And I think our concern was interfere could be very interpretable by a police officer. Liz, yes.
Council took out that language.
Council took that out.
Yeah.
And so that's in red, Pat, what we're talking about with the intent to interfere with, and it's crossed out in red. And again, that is, as Commissioner already said, that's something the council probably looked at. And I believe under the lens of with the city attorney, so there's probably a good reason why that language has been canceled out with the way that it reads.
So my concern is that you added physically a cost, and then in the original language it was just a cost. And so there are multiple ways in which someone can interfere or abuse someone. And so the fact that it says physically, I think that interfere with a person, it should be added.
Let's support that.
Makes sense to me, Crystal.
So you're making a motion, if I understand you, to re-add the word interfere with to item number 7 in the language.
Yes.
I second that.
Is there any other discussion on that at all? All those.
That makes sense to me, because I think that would cover more of the verbal kind of concerns that I think that Commissioner Vice Chair Dunn is talking about. So I support that as well.
Good. Is there any other discussion? Yes.
Your point, would it help moving the word physically for the word abuse?
No.
That was my thought as well.
No, because speaking as a domestic violence survivor and advocate, no, it wouldn't, because there are multiple ways someone can accost someone, and it's beyond physical, and people use other forms of physical acts to intimidate or interfere with someone or create abuse.
Is there any more discussion to the motion? All those in favor with adding the language of interfere with or, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the amendment, I would say that's an amendment, is approved. Any more discussion about item number 7?
Chuck, I have a question for Ron on this. Since you had said that the council had taken that language out, when this comes before council, would you let them know that we were aware of that when we recommended putting this back in?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cannon and Councilman Bacon. Yeah, I think it's very important that they understand their intent by changing that language. And I think Vice Chair Dunn said it eloquently with why when it comes to that. All right. Any other discussion or question about item number 7? All right. Seeing none, I'll move on to item number 8. Did you have a comment, Commissioner Miller?
Oh, no, it's just mumbling to myself. We didn't make any changes.
Yeah, we didn't make any changes to this, Commissioner Cannon. There is a change in red, and the language is or spit. And I'll read this for you. And if you need clarification, please let me know. Urinate or defecate on any street, sidewalk, alley, park, parkway, parking lot, or structure, public carrier, or upon any public building or place of public assemblage, or upon any other public or private property of another open to public view, or upon any private property of another without consent of the owner, except where an approved sanitary facility is provided and used. Any specific questions to what I just read, Commissioner Cannon, just to make sure?
Yes. When I read it, the word spit was still in there. So I think the color change didn't catch, or I should say my screen reader software didn't catch that subtlety as something we eliminated. I assume the conversation on removing spit is because it's perhaps less offensive than some of the other activities, correct?
I would assume so personally, but I don't want to speak for everyone else. You guys agree? Okay. All right. Any other questions from any other commissioners or concerns about item number 8? Vice Chair Dunn, please.
Sorry, I apologize to do this, but I was just further reviewing the language of step 7, and as I thought further about what this ordinance or prohibited act is adhering to, and I don't know if later in the document are there other ordinance or prohibited acts that speaks to harassment by ways of verbal assault or motions or any gestures.
If I understand your correction or your question, yeah, some of this I think we realize that is addressed in other ordinances that they have. They're addressing certain things that are happening in the public, and so I think that's kind of how we came to leaving it as is. Please chime in if you have any other ways to explain that.
I think that, so it wasn't looked at from, at least from my perspective, or what I heard in the conversation was from a domestic violence lens, and I don't know that it adds verbal harassment anywhere else, that it has it specifically anywhere else in the document. It was looked at the way that is policed in public spaces is around shouting at cops, and that right now is a punishable offense. So it was looked at from that language, but not from another lens, and that is a really helpful perspective, I'd say. So I don't think it's addressed elsewhere.
Yeah, I just have some concerns, and I don't know if is there a way to add I don't know if the correct words, like addendums, that like A, B, and C, or examples where because I think it's important that and I would ask that I would think that I think it needs to be amended that prohibited acts should include like physically accosting as well as kind of unwanted, only that count as physical, but the verbal accosting of someone as well. I don't know. I just wanted to just throw that out there, that as reading it, I was just thinking that could leave less protections for individuals in domestic violence relationships.
Understood.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please go ahead, Commissioner Honey.
I did not even think. I think what you're saying is really important, Vice Chair Don. And I would maybe suggest, could we add language back in that addressed that, and maybe because the original intent, like Liz said, I believe was we don't want people getting arrested for yelling at a police officer. Another resident or another community member, could we do something like that to differentiate? I don't know what people think about that. That's just the first thought that popped into my head as a way to maybe include that, achieve one of our original goals.
Well, I mean, the language says with the intent to abuse that person. Yelling at a cop, is that an intent to abuse that person? Like, how is that being used? And are there any known incidents where a person was charged for accosting an officer verbally?
When we add back in to interfere with, is that interfering with the ability to do their job? That is something that has come up in East Lansing of
yelling, interfering with the police officers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's hard. I think it's, you know,
it says clearly within the person or the me. I don't see in here where it says interfering with that person's like inability to do their job, but it says this with the intent to interfere with or abuse that person. And so I don't see anything about like job or duty or things of that. And so I wonder, back to what Commissioner Karen was saying about like community member where it's not. But that by word of I think something of that like language needs to be added. And so I don't know if there's any talks about intimidation or threats later throughout, again, this ordinance. Because that's what I was reading 7 as.
Sure. So I don't believe there's anything else. And keep in mind, this is disorderly conduct is the code that we're looking at right now. I think a lot of what we're discussing is actually covered like in chapter 22 in the human relations section. Those are rights that are afforded elsewhere. And I think that I would want to be cautious in terms of restating. You know, I hate to see someone charged with, you know, multiple counts of really just the same thing. That, you know, I agree that, you know, I absolutely want to make sure that, you know, domestic violence and you know, folks who are dealing with those sorts of issues, that we have laws, you know, we have local regulations that can address those, and that those things are illegal, you know, in the city of East Lansing and not just at a state and federal level. But I don't know that, you know, in disorderly conduct is necessarily the place that we want them to be, because I feel like, again, that can be misused and there's enough discretion in that disorderly conduct. But you know, I feel like a lot of these things are covered in other areas.
Thank you for pointing that out, and I do appreciate that. Pointing out that this is the disorderly conduct and that it's covered in another section. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McWhorter. Appreciate that. Commissioner Kennedy, do you have something you wanted to add?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So I believe we're back to item number 8, and I've already read that, I believe. Is there any discussion or question about item number 8?
None.
Seeing none, I'll go forward to item number 9. just for Commissioner Cannon, we do have some edits from council and just to one little brief edit from the subcommittee. So I'll go ahead and just read it. If you have questions, please, or for clarification. Disturb the public peace by engaging in any fight, brawl in any public place. Any questions, discussion about item number 9? Is that all to number 9? Because it's cut off my page there. Yeah. Any more questions or comments about item number 9? Seeing none, I'll move on.
Wait, there's more. What you just read, was what was eliminated?
Yes, please let me read it as it was sent to us, and I'll say what is in green and with what we did, and what is in red with what the council has done. All right, disturb the peace, or excuse me, disturb the public peace, and we as a commission, subcommission, took out and quiet by. So I'll start that little section there. Disturb the public peace and quiet by. And then it goes on to have it itemized out by council, loud or boisterous conduct or by. And then we go back to regular language, engage in any other or any, excuse me. And then we have crossed out from council, disturbance in red, comma, fight, and then or brawl. So or it has been eliminated. And then brawl is in regular language. And then we have or quarrel crossed out by council in red in any public place. So disturb the public peace and quiet by the loud or boisterous conduct or by engaging in any disturbance, fight, or brawl or quarrel in any public place. And we have it left as disturb the public peace by engaging in any fight, brawl in any public place.
That's the language that is currently in play, right?
Correct.
What you just read.
Correct. Yes, sir. The latest version.
Yeah.
Any other questions or concern about item number 9? All right, moving on. I'll move to item number 10. And just to hopefully make this a little bit more clear for Commissioner Cannon, when I get to a red part, I'll just say it out loud. I'll just read it as such. So assemble or act in concert with 4 or more other persons for the purpose of engaging in conduct constituting the crime of riot, or be present at any assembly that either has or develops such as a purpose and remain threat with intent to advance such purpose. For purposes of this section, a person other than an on-duty law enforcement officer remains at a riot with the intent to advance in purpose if they participate in the riot. Now, what's crossed out in red is any manner, including but not to limited to by, is what's crossed out. So reading that sentence over for you, for purposes of this section, a person other than an on-duty law enforcement officer remains at a riot with the intent to advance his purpose if they participate in the riot, committing or attempting to commit any of the following acts. Do you follow Commissioner Cannon on that?
Yeah, I do. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions or concerns about item number 10?
Yeah, I have some concerns about this one. I think kind of going back to the idea that all of the acts that are covered by this are also covered in other sections of the code. And I guess I'm wondering if all of these are already covered on their own, why give the additional label of calling it a riot? And I guess I'm trying to understand, and I'm open to feedback from other commissioners in terms of, what benefit to public safety does this give us versus, concerns that we may have in terms of uneven enforcement and discretion not being used in an equitable manner.
Thank you, Commissioner Wortman. Commissioner Sauter?
The first part worries me that just assembling with an intent could lead to being charged with officers not actually committing the act of riot. That's why I'm reading the first part of it.
I certainly think that the way that this has been rewritten definitely limits that much more, and I think that that's a positive step. But I think that I would argue that we should go even further and just strike this entirely.
Is there any more discussion about item number 10 as far as kind of
I do think so. Riot is a legal term, and it's a legal term that is differentiated from unlawful assembly. So I'm not actually like I would be pro if we want to take out the word riot, that'd be great. But I suspect that's why that is specifically named in there.
Liz, if I can just add something to it, if you look at the definition of riot, it says a violent disturbance of the peace by a crowd.
Commissioner Tyler, can you please repeat that? I missed a little bit of that.
Yeah, so the definition of riot is a violent disturbance of the peace by a crowd.
Any more comments, suggestions on item number 10?
Well, I have a question, Carla. Are you saying that you believe that this is covered in a different part of that's not this particular ordinance? Public disturbances is covered elsewhere, and you're suggesting we just strike 10 completely?
So what I'm saying is that I guess the A, B. Sorry, I'm just looking through to see which ones were not struck. A, B, and E. A, B, D, and E. I guess. The items that are enumerated under number 10 are the ones that have not been stricken are items that are going to be covered in other areas. So throwing or propelling an object that's of sufficient weight or dangerous or not noxious substance. Basically if you're throwing something heavy at people or property, that's covered by other sections of code. Damaging, destroying, injuring, or defacing public property or private property, not their own, that's covered elsewhere. There's really probably not a good reason for that to be not legal. Obstructing the police, again, I'm sure that is covered elsewhere in code. Refusing or failing to leave a public street or sidewalk. These are all things that I'm confident, other than maybe item E, are covered elsewhere. I mean, these are acts which are already illegal.
Right. And so I think, and I agree, tend to, in the sense of assemble or act in concern with a person with the intent to engage or incite a riot, or to organize, promote, participate in, carry out, and commit or any violence or interference. I just feel like, because I'm looking at I looked up the legality of a riot and looked at other ways in which riots are prohibited or listed in the law. And so looking at Cornell Law School, their code for it is whoever travels interstate or foreign commerce or uses any facility or interstate violence in interference of a riot or to aid or abet any person inside or participate. So I wonder if there's a way to address the issue of a riot in disorderly acts of engaging in a riot differently than what is stated here.
Vice Chair Dunn, please continue with the questioning. I just got to take a quick break here for a quick second, so please continue. It'll be about 30 seconds of that.
Okay. I don't know if anyone will be entertaining kind of looking at other ways to address the issue of a riot in this ordinance as it pertains to disorderly conduct.
It goes back to what Carla was saying earlier about how riot is covered at other areas. So to me, if our interest is in protecting people of marginalized communities, let's say 4 people of those community members are in the wrong place at the wrong, you're giving them an option here to be charged. To me, the whole word assemble itself makes me worries me.
Yeah, and I guess the part that really worries me on this is, to really when it comes down to it, what's the difference between a protest that you don't like and a riot? Who gets to make that distinction? Is that a distinction that we feel comfortable leaving in the hands of the police, or is that something that we want to be more?
I really thought about it from that perspective, Carla, and I am, as just an individual, comfortable with just striking the whole thing, the whole number 10. But that's just me. I think we're up for interpretation, and it concerns me.
Is there any more discussion specifically to that issue? Because if I understand what I'm hearing, and I apologize, I just had to step for a moment, is that there's a possibility there'll be a motion to go and strike out number 10. Is that kind of where we're at right now? Okay. So do you want to entertain a motion, Commissioner McWhorter, in regards to that, or are we still discussing?
Unless anyone else has any discussion that they'd like to add, I'd like to propose a motion.
Is there any format that we had before?
It kind of depends on if there's consensus or not. When there isn't, then it's hard to tell, right?
Okay.
I think I heard noddings of heads.
Check for reference, in our last 4-hour meeting, we did take roll call votes on each item. So I think that may be appropriate here as well.
Although we've already made votes, we've already made changes to this ordinance without a roll call vote.
Right. That is true.
See how it goes.
I guess if hear any names, then I think it'll be something.
Okay. All those in favor in striking item number 10, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 10 has been eliminated.
Good work, Carla.
Good work, HRC.
Number 11 has been reserved, Commissioner Cannon. So everything is crossed out. There's nothing there. Did your software catch that?
I don't recall. I wasn't committing the section's numbers to memory as I was reading it.
Okay. Well, I'll just read it because it's only one sentence. I don't think it'll take too much time. So item number 11 says jostle or roughly crowd persons in any street, alley, park, or public building. And this was done by council to strike all of that. And it's been reserved. Just
okay with that.
Okay. Any other discussions or questions about item 11? Item number 12, Commissioner Cannon, this has also been looked at by council and all of it has been crossed out and reserved. Would you like for me to read it?
Just the first few words of the sentence, put it in perspective for context.
Absolutely. I'll read, and please let me know if you want me to continue. Loiter, remain, or wander, and upon the appearance of a peace officer, take flight.
Yes, thank you.
Any other discussions or comments about item number 12?
None.
All right, moving on. All right, we're on item number 13, and Commissioner Cannon, I'll just read as is, and the suggestions from the subcommittee has been made on this, no council correction. So let me know kind of what you're feeling, and I can also clarify what we're adding and what has been taken. Where prostitution, gambling, the illegal sale of intoxicating liquor, controlled substances, or any other illegal businesses or occupation is permitted or conducted. Okay, and we've added as the subcommittee this whole section that I'm about to read right now to what I just read. Gambling includes, but not limited to, keeping or maintaining a gaming room, gaming table, or any other policy or pool tickets used for gaming, knowingly suffering a gaming room, gaming tables, or any policy or pool tickets to be kept, maintained, played, or sold on any premises occupied or controlled by him or her except as permitted by law. Conducting or attending.
What is the word after knowingly? I didn't quite catch that. Earlier. Suffering?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't know what the section is, so I'll just start. Okay, I got you. So you're clear on that? Knowingly suffering a gaming room, gaming tables, or any policy or pool tickets to be kept, maintained, played, or sold on any premises occupied or controlled by him or her except as permitted by law. Conducting or attending any cockfight or dogfight, or placing, receiving, or transmitting any bet on the outcome of any race, contest, or game of any kind whatsoever. And that whole section that has been added for item number 13, I believe we pulled from another section that was reserved. So we just combined that, if I remember correctly, Commissioner Miller and Commissioner Honey, and that's why and where that has been added.
I have a question, not so much in opposition. In some places, this document refers to alcoholic liquor, and other places just liquor. Is there a difference other than the minds of the beholder?
I don't know. I was trying to go back and see where liquor is also said. You said you heard it earlier, and where we were distinguishing it differently than what we're saying now.
In some places, it specifically says alcoholic liquor, and what you just read just said liquor.
Yeah, this one says intoxicating liquor.
And we don't have intoxicating liquor in any other places other than just this one right here, correct? From what I remember, I didn't remember reading that aloud about intoxicating liquor. I'll give a moment for us to kind of review that real fast.
So I'm actually going through, I guess the advantage of this being a virtual meeting, I'm going through municipal code and doing a quick search for intoxicating. I'm seeing in section 44, it looks like operating a snowmobile under the influence, 44-182, motor vehicle under influence of both, say, intoxicating liquor or a controlled substance. So that seems to be, I guess, a term of art. Although 44-467 just says influence of liquor. From what I'm seeing.
Does that give you clarification, Commissioner Cannon, to being okay with you? Or?
Personally, I have a leaning toward alcoholic liquor, but I think we can leave it as it is.
Okay. Any other questions or comments in regards to number 13, item 13? All right, moving on. Item 14, Commissioner Cannon has been reserved. And to give you a perspective on that language, it's just one sentence, so it shouldn't be too much. But what has been done by council is the reserved part. So we didn't do this, the council did. But here's what it says. Solicit or accost any person for the purpose, of engaging in prostitution or any illegal or immoral act. And that has been all the way crossed out because we addressed that in the other sections of this ordinance.
Thank you, Chuck.
No problem. All right. Any questions or concerns about item 14? Seeing none, moving on. Same story here, Commissioner Cannon. Everything's been crossed out. This is reserved as well by council. And I'll read it for you here. Knowingly transport any person to a place where prostitution or gambling is practiced, encouraged, or allowed for the purposes of enabling such person to engage in such acts. And so that has been taken out altogether.
Thank you.
No worries.
No.
Any questions or comments about that? I'll move on. Did you have a comment, Councilman Bacon? Okay, maybe he's just doing something else. All right. So item number 16, Commissioner Cannon has been reserved, and that has been done by the subcommittee that was working on this. And I'll read the first sentence just to kind of give you a perspective. Keep or maintain.
Yeah, we actually just moved that up to that other section. We already read that whole thing. That we just moved that from 16 up into that original place. 13.
Okay. So does that make sense to you, Commissioner Cannon? All right, I'll move on then. Past 16. Thank you, Commissioner Honey, keeping me on track with that. I'm just reading. You guys got me reading more than I've read out loud in a long time. All right. All right. So we're to item number 17, and that has probably the same story as item 16. That has been done by the subcommittee. It's been reserved, Commissioner Cannon. And just to give you perspective, normally permit or suffer any place occupied or controlled by him or her to be used as such to disturb the public peace. So that's been reserved because I think it's already been addressed, if I'm not mistaken. Any questions or comments about item number 17?
No.
All right, moving on to item 18. And the subcommittee did not have any corrections, suggestions on this, Commissioner Cannon. There is some language in there that has been done by council, so I will just go ahead and read it for you as is with the corrections from council. Assault, obstruct, resist, hinder any member of the police force, any peace officer or firefighter in the discharge of lawful duties.
That was their added language.
That was what's left. Now I can read, and I'll read the first version that we were looking at with the stuff not being amended in there. Assault, obstruct, resist, or hinder or oppose any member of the police force, any peace officer or firefighter in the discharge of his or her their lawful duties as such. So that's what it said originally.
Okay.
And I'll read it one more time because it's really short. To what we're at.
Chuck, I thought we had struck, obstruct, resist, or hinder, or oppose. Isn't that the line through there?
No.
Oh, okay.
But there is a question on 18 unlawful. It's in blue, and I believe that's possibly supposed to be in green, and that was a suggestion or amendment that we made as the subcommittee, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound familiar at all? Commissioner Miller or Commissioner Honey. So I think the only correction or amendment or suggestion we have, Commissioner Cannon, on 18 was in the last part of that sentence, and we had lawful duties as the last two words. So assault, obstruct, resist, hinder any member of the police force, any peace officer or firefighter in the discharge of lawful duties. So we made the suggestion to add lawful duties in there. Any questions or concerns about 18?
Not for me, thank you.
Done.
All right, moving on to 19. 19 has been reserved.
They wanted this reserved. Is that because it appears somewhere else, or you feel strongly enough that this should be retained language?
I believe this was somewhere else, and we crossed it out from that. If I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Honey, Commissioner Miller, we addressed this in a different part of the ordinance.
Yeah, this was combined in item number 4.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Can I make a suggestion, just for the sake of time? And this does not, but really, if you look at the rest of this, there are no more recommended changes that we made that are any different to what the city council is. So that might be that's at the will of the committee and what you think, Chair Grigsby. But that's it for our changes, for our suggested changes, correct?
Yeah, that's all we had going for the whole entire document, all the way up to 33. So and then the only changes that are made, as you said, are the ones made by the council.
I agree with Commissioner Coney was saying. Only thing I would like to double back to is 18, and would like that we strike resist. Because if we have assault, obstruct, and hinder is what led to some of the incidents leading to I can't even think Yeah.
Okay, before we do that, I just want to make sure so we don't have to double back.
I have it in my notes. I left early, but in my notes I have it obstruct, resist, and hinder crossed out. So.
That's what I thought too. That's what I was seeing in the document that I'm looking at. I don't know if we're looking at the same one, but I thought we had recommended taking all of those out and just leaving. We had taken out resist for that exact reason.
Oh, okay. So I
We
just
had just left assault any member of the police force, any peace officer or firefighter in discharge of their lawful duties. That's my recollection. I recall taking out obstruct, resist, or hinder, or oppose, because they're all so subjective.
Language. Yeah,
okay.
language.
If I may interject here, so before we actually make a decision or have more discussion on 18, I just want to come to a consensus that we're okay with the rest of this ordinance as is, and so when we go back to 18, we're okay with the rest of the document once we kind of amend that. Is that kind of what we're thinking right now?
Yes.
Okay, we're in.
I do have up 20. I have a added suggestion, but I would like that if there's any other concerns throughout the rest of the document, that we leave the opportunity for people to bring that up, because I do want to add something to something I feel like should be added to.
Okay, let's.
I was just trying to have us not have to read every single item.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I understand, so Vice Chair Dunn, is 20 the only one that you kind of want to look at, or was there multiple ones that you wanted to look at for the rest of the document?
No, that's the only one. But I think for what Commissioner Honey is saying is that just for the sake of time, avoid reading. So just going through and asking if there's any changes, anyone who does have concerns about any of the rest of the ordinance can speak up.
Absolutely. Is there any more discussion on that? Okay, so if I'm understanding what the commission wants to do, so we're jumping to work on 18, then we're coming back to 20, or we're going to address 20 now and then go back to 18.
Can we address 18 and then proceeding from that, we'll ask if anyone has any questions or modifications to the rest, the following numbers.
Okay, sounds good. So can you please, tell me repeat what 18, what you want to do with that, or suggestion to that?
I was saying, because I was trying to look up, and I don't know if anyone has any insight on, again, I want to remove resist or obstruct or hinder. I think that should be stricken.
And oppose. I think we should take oppose out too.
Oppose is out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like City Council struck the or oppose.
Okay.
I would argue, okay, if I am assaulting a police officer, I'm potentially going to be charged not only with assault, but also with assault of a member of the police force. Why?
Because I was there with their job, right?
Okay, but if I punch somebody, then why do I get 2 charges if it's a police officer and only 1 if it's
right?
So anyone else?
Right. I agree.
Any more comments in regards to?
I can't hear you, Chuck.
Sorry, is there any more comments in regard? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? So is there any more comments about the language in 18? Are we entertaining a motion, or are we just talking about that? What are we thinking right now for 18?
We're entertaining a motion to remove, obstruct, resist, or hinder any member of the police force, any peace officer or firefighter in the discharge of their lawful duties. So we're making a motion to remove, obstruct, resist, or hinder.
But it sounded to me like Carla was questioning the whole item because it's already against the law to assault somebody. Is that what you were saying, Carla? I might be misunderstanding.
I am, yeah, and I'm struggling with that versus what purpose does this serve in terms of maintaining public safety, and I think there is some benefit to public safety in allowing police officers, firefighters, to be able to do their jobs unhindered. But how do we balance that?
So would we give example of like hindering or obstructing someone to do so? So like, I don't know what would be an example where that has been used where somebody, intentionally prevented a officer or firefighter from responding to their duty. I don't know if anyone knows any examples of that.
I mean, I'm just thinking, this really the way that this is written right now, if I were to hinder a police officer by giving them, by lying to them, that's illegal under
Other example,
under number 18. Or if I'm, I think I'm thinking back to MSU and couch burnings and students, not dispersing and interfering with the fire department being able to do their job and put out fires. I don't know where that balance is.
Shelley, did you have a comment?
Carla got there. That's exactly when they use it.
Okay. All right.
Firefighters.
Okay.
Situation.
So, is there a motion on the floor for item number 10?
So would the balance be to remove? It's item 18. Would the balance be to remove resist? Because I don't understand in the way in which I know it's been traditionally used, and I don't know if there's any definitions. Like I don't know if they have a legal definition for resist. But I think the example of hindering or obstructing it, or hindering in the case of the firefighter is an example. But resist, I don't think is necessary in this.
I definitely would agree with that. Resist is a big challenge in itself when you come to the discretion of what that is, and so I'm all for that. Now, is there any other maybe a balance or suggestion before I believe Vice Chair Dunn makes her motion?
Maybe we add the word physical, to physically obstruct or hinder, and is that striking that balance?
I'd say no, Carla, because someone could obstruct or hinder with shouting and words they say. And I think that's part of what they were getting at with that language.
Of their lawful duties, of the officer's lawful duties, they could hinder someone by shouting at them.
Is that I guess so you're asking the question of what you're done? Is it a general question?
Yeah, I'm curious as to what Commissioner Cannon meant by hindering someone from their duties or obstructing their duties by.
Words, depending on how they're used, can definitely be intrusive and resisting and get in the way of someone doing what they need to do.
Is it okay if we remove? I would agree. That was to my earlier argument with regards to a public servant. I would expect that they would, be more equipped to deal with escalated incidents and not allow themselves to internalize or be impacted by someone's words in a way that would interfere them from following out their job.
You would expect a higher level of tolerance.
given that they are essentially have weapons and militarized, yes.
Yeah, and I think again, how do you, who gets to decide what is, what meets the criteria for this number 18 versus what is a protest?
Right.
Is a protest where you don't like what's being said is and you happen to be, a police officer or firefighter, does that suddenly become a hindrance to you doing your job?
Crystal and Carla made good points, and I can live with what you're describing.
All right.
Is it okay if we move forward with the discussion, or is there any?
Yes, please, Vice Chair Dunn. Let's go with the motion. I think we're in consensus now with the balance that you wanted to strike.
Okay, so if I'm correct, I would like to make a motion to amend 18 of the disorderly conduct ordinance to physically assault, obstruct, strike, resist, or hinder any member of the police force, any peace officer, firefighter, in the discharge of their lawful duties. Is that correct?
So
you're striking that whole end of the sentence?
No, I'm sorry. Add physically assault and strike, resist.
Okay, gotcha.
So if I understand, physically assault, obstruct, hinder any member of the police force, any peace officer, so on and so forth. Is that what you're saying? Or okay?
And I support that.
All right. Is there any more discussion on that?
I would offer a friendly amendment to strike the word assault as well.
Is there any other discussion on that, the friendly amendment?
I agree.
Would you read that then, Carla? Can you read us your suggestion?
Yes, and hopefully I can get this right. To physically obstruct, or hinder any member of the police force, any peace officer or firefighter in the discharge of their lawful duties.
Works for me.
All right. Is there any more discussion on the motion as is with the friendly amendment added?
I support her friendly amendment.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Excuse me, am I jumping ahead? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just Robert's rules, Crystal. You can accept or reject my friendly amendment. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner McWhirter. I need to keep me in line. All right. So are we ready to vote now? Am I in the right place? Okay. All those in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So passed. Correct.
Crystal wanted to talk about something in 20.
Yes, I didn't see it here, but it speaks to 20 and it speaks to 25 about make a false report by telephone or otherwise. In 20 was knowingly summoned without any good reason, therefore by telephone or otherwise, the police or fire department or any public or private ambulance to go to any address where the service call is not needed. I was thinking about what police or fire, whoever, solely with the intent to discriminate on the basis of a person's race, ethnicity, religion, things of that sort. And I don't know if there's any language in there about how many officers unjustifiably or with the sole intent of discrimination.
Commissioner Miller.
A week or two ago, I think about 2 weeks ago, City Council actually passed a separate ordinance 1490, that addresses that very thing.
Please tell me it's not called the Karen Act.
Oh, all right. Let's move on. Any other discussion about item 20?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then you're good with item 25 now then?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any more discussion for the rest of the document that we're looking at here, what's been sent down by council? Okay.
I would like to have some discussion regarding item 31. I think I have some similar concerns on this that are some of my earlier questions. I guess I just feel like some of this is again very open to interpretation. A reasonable period of time. What is that? Who decides that? That doesn't seem to be defined in East Lansing's municipal code. Find that balance of it is enforced versus leaving the unnecessary discretion.
I'm sorry, this is 31.
In here. Yes. Yep. So, and I'm again kind of guessing that this probably got added in, couch fires, things of that nature. I'm assuming that some of this kind of repeats the same things that we had discussed on the previous item in terms of interfering with or physically interfering with the firefighter being able to do their job. And again, I wonder if this is doing more than it needs to do, and if we've already accomplished what we want to accomplish in 31.
Can we read 31 out loud just for the sake of, because I it's in the middle of the paragraph where it's saying orders individuals to vacate the area in a reasonable time period. So can we just read 31 as it is currently before we have discussion?
When you say, can we read it, are you talking about reading it as with the council's amendments as far as?
With the amendments.
Okay.
And then figure out how we could get to what Carla was saying about the necessary, language. Is that language still necessary?
Okay, so we'll be going through Commissioner Cannon, item 31, and I'll read with the amendments from council going forward. So here it is. Knowingly or intentionally remaining on a public sidewalk, public street, private property open to the public, or the unenclosed private property of another within 300 feet of a structure, fire, vehicle fire, or unlawful fire after the fire or police official orders individuals to vacate the area and a reasonable period of time has elapsed which permits individuals to leave the area. No person shall remain on public sidewalk, public street, property of another between a fire truck parked adjacent to the structure fire, vehicle fire, or an unlawful fire that fire officials are seeking to contain after being ordered to vacate the area. And then item A within the 31 section, Commissioner Cannon, item A states the provisions do not apply to persons attempting to put or to contain the fire prior to the arrival of police or firefighting personnel. To persons attempting.
I've read this 2 or 3 times and I'm still okay with it.
Okay. Does anyone else need? Okay. Is there a motion on item 31 that someone wants to make in regards to their preference?
Yes. And so getting at what was the reason why we were talking about it is orders individuals to vacate the area in a reasonable period of time has elapsed, which permit individuals to leave the area. I don't again get what it's speaking to, but I don't know if it is necessary because we talks about physically obstructing police or officers from doing their lawful duties. So if we already have that, I don't remember what number that was. I don't think that linking of hindering or physically obstructing police or fire from doing their lawful duties. And I think
Yeah, I just
activity form.
Commissioner McWhirter?
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I think that again, putting myself in this position, if I am, in the way of the fire department when they are trying to put out a couch fire, I'm going to be charged under 18, and I'm going to be charged under 31. Why?
Okay. So, is there any more discussion about that specific item in 31? Does anyone have anything else to add to that comment? If not, let's entertain a motion to, I believe, strike the language. And if you don't mind, Vice Chair Dunn, can you just go ahead and read what you want to take out of that section of 31 for us, please? For your motion?
The motion is to reserve 31.
Oh, reserve it altogether.
Yes.
Okay.
A second.
Okay. So your motion is to reserve 31. It's been seconded by Commissioner McWhirter. Is there any other discussion about 31 from any other commissioners? Although, Commissioner Miller, did you get that? I know I didn't see you. You got that? Okay. So is there any other discussion on 31 as far as making it and reserving it, taking it all out together? Seeing none, all those in favor of reserving item 31 throughout, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, item 31 has been reserved.
Good job, team.
I don't anymore. So as the document as laid out now after our input, does anyone have anything else that they want to comment on, amend, change, or look at or discuss? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve this document as written with our updates and what has already been written and sent down to us from council. Does anyone want to make a motion on that?
So moved from Pat.
Is there a second?
Liz will second.
Is there any discussion for sorry, you guys got papers, got my papers all over the place here. Is there any more changes or any discussion with what we got going on? Are we all good with ordinance 1491? All right.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so these are the recommendations that we are making to City Council and requesting that they make these changes. Is that
That's correct.
really what we're doing here? Okay.
Correct. And we promised that we would get this done for them. So Mayor Stevens had this on his item to make decision on.
Sure.
All right. Are we all done with that? All right.
Do we need to vote on that still?
We did not vote. Did we not vote?
Right.
Okay.
No, we didn't.
I apologize for that.
You were thinking about it.
Yes, all those. It's getting to the 2.5 hour mark. So I apologize. So all those in favor for as is for 1491 to send to council. Is there a excuse me? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there a second? Excuse me. Is there anyone opposed? Excuse me. Seeing none, the motion passes as far as this is the document that we'll submit to council. So thank you so much for your patience, guys, on my fumbling with that. All right.
You did fine.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not in charge tonight. Let me just tell you.
I know, how you gonna do me like that on the first night like this? We get this big old ordinance like that. So
Sorry, Chuck.
I mean, it's been since high school since I had Robert's rules at my whelm. So it's like, all right.
I gave you the heads up and you said it was okay. So.
All right. I won't complain. I just want to say thank you guys for having the confidence in me to do this. I take it as very seriously and a great honor. So I appreciate that. All right. Yes, please, Commissioner Cannon.
Chuck, you did a nice job of leading us through this. It was complex, and you did a nice job, and I thank you for it. And Crystal, welcome, and you did your role as well. And I don't want to end our meeting without saying thanks again to Karen for her leadership at the interim. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
I second that, Commissioner Cannon, and I appreciate what you all bring to the table. All right, moving on. So we have item on the agenda 5.2, follow-up questions for East Lansing Police regarding 2019 complaint report. I believe that our good friend Shelley has sent out what we had left from that meeting, and everyone's had a chance. And I know Commissioner Honey wanted to kind of really address this, so I'll open this up to you and some of the things that you want to do. I'll just say this: for me, my main concern is identification of who the complaints were towards in the complaint. We had no names, we had no identification. And I didn't know if that was part of the internal investigation policy, that they couldn't do that. But I would like to have the identification of the officers who were involved with the complaints, and then that's what I'll add. So I'll leave it up to you, Commissioner Honey, to take lead on this.
Okay, if it's okay, I know we didn't mean to get in a time crunch again. We kind of did. I went through the notes from our meeting that were sent to me, 14 pages, and really tried to extrapolate the what we had wanted follow up on, and I can read through them and people can add to them or object to them. Is that okay with everybody? Just for the sake of time, I'm not trying to dominate the conversation, but I really did go through it pretty carefully today and take out what we as a commission had wanted follow up on.
Please, so Commissioner Honey, please go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Okay. So I think you just addressed this. We had asked for a follow up. There was the situation where the woman had been pulled over for shielding her face. She was an African American woman. We wanted follow up on the nature of we asked if that officer who pulled her over had a history of complaints, and he did. We asked for a follow up on the nature of those complaints to try to see if there was a theme of this particular officer pulling particular people over for particular reasons. Does everybody remember that? And is that good
yes?
For everybody?
Yes.
Okay. We had asked we were talking about passenger ID. Why sometimes police officers ask the passengers for their ID and why they don't. We wanted to know if there was a protocol for that. And we asked for data on how often ID of the passenger is asked for and what the rationale for that is. And we also discussed with the police chief and the assistant chief that were there that night had said that the passenger doesn't actually have to show them their ID, but we were concerned people don't know that they don't have to show their ID. And we had requested that the police officers, when they ask for the ID of a passenger, if that will continue to be a protocol for them, that they make sure that they tell them, you do not have to show me your ID, however, are you willing to? Does everyone agree with that?
Yeah, and that goes into, I think, what Commissioner Miller has. She was wanting to get clarification on trends or patterns that was going into that. I think that leads into that. Right. Vice Chair. Oh, okay. Vice Chair Dunn, you had something you wanted to add real quick?
I hate to, but what was that? Disorderly conduct and failure to identify yourself. If an officer makes a stop and he considers that you violated the law and he asks for identification, I'm wondering, what is that the justification of why, and how to get around that, of maybe amending any law that or ordinance that allows or prohibits allows the officer to do such. But anyways, go ahead.
Are you talking specifically about asking the passenger in the car for their ID? Because that's what this was about. Yes, because
in my mind, it's that if I made a stop, you were in a sense violating the law. And so if my reasoning for asking for the ID, maybe you or your passenger threw out something of the one or something. So I'm just trying to get at why they're asking. But I think to the point if we're asking about trends and letting people know they technically don't, but then it's a gray area under the current ordinance.
Yeah, I think you're saying the same thing we're saying, that we just want to know what's the rationale behind. And if there's a justified reason for asking for the ID, that's something, but we wanted to study trends about when that's done and what's the race of the people whose IDs are being asked for, really, to get to be honest about it.
Okay, but that's it.
When they came in February, they told us that they were going to have a fair and impartial policing training in the summer of 2020. I'd like to know whether they did that. Simple enough. They said that was going to happen. I know there's a lot that didn't happen this summer because of COVID, so I'm not being accusatory. They said that was going to happen, and I'd like to know if it did.
Okay.
So, is everyone good with that?
Yep. Let's keep it going. Absolutely, keep going.
It happened, but I'm sure they'll report out on it.
Oh, good. Thank you, Shelley. That's really nice. Maybe we don't even have to ask them. You did a report about it. That would be great. Okay. I know that this came from Dr. Tyler particularly, and I thought it was a great question. He was concerned about, and we were all concerned about, how do they have any way of measuring and the effectiveness of these trainings that they're going through. We had concern that you can put anybody through any kind of training, but if you're not doing any sort of measuring of the effectiveness of the training, is it any good? And please, Dr. Tyler, if you might elaborate, because I remember that being something you had brought up.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely important to have maybe a pre and post assessment of the individual training that they have.
I saw somewhere that, and I don't know if this is true for East Lansing Police, but they have about 60 hours of gun training, and there's only about 10 to 12 hours of diversity and equity training when it comes to some of the different things. And I don't know if that's falls with under what we're concerned about, but I thought that was a very big discrepancy on balance.
Well, then maybe a follow-up question could be, could you tell, just the nature of what trainings you have and what percentage of time is spent on what? I think that would be appropriate to ask.
And I think also it would be appropriate to ask for qualitative and quantitative feedback.
Yes.
Folks say that things we hear, but hearing something is feedback. So qualitative and quantitative data.
Please go ahead.
Okay. We were concerned about we had recommended that they have specific trainings for special populations. I know Commissioner Cannon had asked particularly about training in how to deal with a deaf driver, and then we talked about drivers with or not necessarily drivers with autism, bipolar disorder, other mental illnesses. We had recommended and wanted to know if they have participated in any trainings in dealing with special populations.
That's true.
Okay, everybody good with that?
Yeah, just for the sake of time, Commissioner Honey, just go ahead and read through them, and if anyone has any objections to
that,
okay, please go ahead, go through.
Okay.
We just to let you know, we are at about the 10-minute mark, so just to kind of give you a point of reference.
I can talk really fast, you guys, if you want me to.
I will listen as fast as I can.
It is a special gift of mine. We wanted follow up to a particular complaint, which was complaint 1902, in which they talked about they do these things where they just run random license plates and then they pull people over based on if their tags are expired. We wanted to know in that particular situation what the other plates, they had 4 plates and they ended up pulling somebody over, and that person was an African-American person and had expired tabs. We were curious about what the other 3 plates that they had randomly run were, looking once again for trends. Are they sitting on the side of the road, running license plates based on the race of the driver? That's really what it was about.
Why randomly run license plates?
Yeah. Oh, sure. We could just ask that. Why are you randomly running license? I think that's better. That's even better. Yeah, why are they randomly running license plates? They really need more people to pull over and arrest. Okay, I'm almost there. Let's see. They talked about installing a system in February to track the sex, race, and reason for the stops. And the officers are supposed to give daily reports. And we're just curious. I'd just like to know if that has been implemented. That was in February that they said they were going to implement that. And maybe, Shelley, maybe you know the answer to that. But I want to follow up about that. Yes?
Yes.
They talked about bodily worn data going on a public website, and they said it would be up by the end of the week in February. Again, I could have done my homework and looked. I don't know whether that happened or not. Does anybody know whether that happened? So we'd like follow up on that as well. And we had talked about Jan, what's Jan's last name? The social worker for Lansing Police Department. She had expressed a willingness to do some consulting or to possibly be for us to be able to use her in East Lansing. And they had discussed that they were going to talk about that with her. I was wondering if there was any follow up on that.
Is
Can I make a
relevant.
quick note on
I
that?
was just gonna make the site go on.
Yeah, so we posted for 2 full-time social workers to join the department.
Okay, so maybe that one's inconsequential at this point then. That's great to know. And then there was talk about the East Lansing Police Department reporting to the federal, the FBI's program where they're collecting use of force data. And I think that the police chief had indicated that they were going to start doing that. And I was curious about whether they were participating in that or not. You guys recall that conversation?
Yes, please go. Yes.
Are you referring to the Brady's list of East Lansing reporting to the Brady's list?
Is that, I don't know if that's what it's called. Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the last thing was they were talking about getting accredited. I think Hazlitt, or I think they said Meridian Township had gone through an accreditation process and that they were going to go through an accreditation process. And I was just curious about where they were with that. And that's for my follow-up questions.
Any other commissioners have anything they want to input on the follow-up questions?
I just had a concern about you said body cam footage being putting on a public, I don't know. Can you read that one about?
Did you say that they had done that or not? Or you don't know, Shelly?
What was the concern about? So you're saying that if an officer is wearing a body cam, that footage should automatically be made public?
Yes. That's what they had said they were going to do.
Or were they, was it that the body cam review information was going to be publicized? Every month they review 2 days of body cam footage based on the dates that the agency selects.
Hold on, let me see. I have the document right here.
Yeah, because I would have concerns about, in the sense of someone's like, of just being, but like the data definitely from the random reviews being published of what was found.
Sure. No, that's a good question.
Yeah, I do have recollection that we had asked for that data. I don't have recollection of the actual footage being made public or any intent to do that. And I would agree that there are definitely some privacy and other issues involved with that.
Okay. Trying to see. Go back through where I got this from. Must have been near the end. Review enforcement action.
And then while we are waiting, I was randomly selected to review for, I believe, the month of July.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just unfamiliar with that process and what that would look like. And I don't think I ever received the footage for the dates that I selected. And I just wanted to know, where did that practice come about? And where is that information being published? Is that pertaining to what we were just talking about the live footage or body cam footage?
So Crystal, when the police department got their body cams, I believe a comment came from the HRC during one of the reviews that they would like to know what was being done with that body cam footage. Mm-hmm. So what happened is they asked the HRC to provide, it started out as 1 date a month. Mm-hmm. And then the East Lansing Police Department supervisors review every piece of video footage from those body cams for everything that worked on that date, to ensure that policies weren't being broken or things weren't happening that they didn't know about. It was more recently increased to 2 days a month, but the information, the videos don't go to the commissioner. The commissioner just selects the dates. And then they are working on accumulating that data. The last I knew, that data was not published. And if you recall what the chief and the deputy chief said at that time is, the sample is so very small, it's difficult to extract meaningful information from it, in that there might be, let's say, one homicide on that day, but the percentage of homicides then would be high because you're dealing with such a small sample size.
So would the ask then be to look at data where there is, I guess, this increased rate of like officer activity, or what's the word I'm looking for? Interference or engagement with individuals, so that we're able to have a better sample, because I could pick dates and it could just be traffic footage and no civilian interaction. And so I wonder if we can modify that for looking at dates where there are actual engagement, or interaction with officers.
Can I interrupt real quick? Because I just want to correct myself. I misspoke. I found what I was talking about. It wasn't actually putting up the video footage. It was putting up the data. So I think that's what someone had said.
Okay.
These going to go public, and they wanted to send it to the commission first, but they would be putting up graphs on the website by the end of the week that summarized the data from those body cam viewings. So I apologize. It wasn't that they were going to put up the body cam.
Yeah, and was it, my recollection is that it wasn't specific to those dates that we were selecting, but that was going to be data that was going to be aggregated over all of their interactions. Since that was something that was starting to be collected, because I know, and my recollection is that the chief was arguing that the amount of data that they had at that point was not enough to draw any statistical conclusions, which I did some number crunching after the fact, and it did reach the level that the results were statistically significant. I have to find my calculations to get more into the specifics of that, but there's enough data for folks to draw reasonable conclusions.
Carla, you would disagree with the chief's point that it was not really relevant because such small samples?
So I think his argument was not about the 1 or 2 days per month that we have selected. I believe his argument was that all of the data that they were aggregating from all of these daily reports that they had instituted earlier this year, that information, that there wasn't enough of that information to draw any reasonable conclusions, and that they were withholding some of the information, at least at that point, with the concern that folks might draw the wrong conclusions, was kind of essentially what I was reading into it. And
I'm going to have to interject here. We are at the 9:59 mark, and we will be losing our closed caption, if I understand correctly, at 10. So is everyone comfortable with the questions submitted from Commissioner Honey as far as going forward with what we have as of now? Pretty much yes.
Yes.
Okay, because we'll have to.
Suggest that people are free to send suggestions through the email in the next couple of days, and we, if there's something burning, wants to know. Is that okay with that?
Yes, and so we did the why randomly run license plates, and then but yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So
I just want to quickly ask, where specifically is this data being published? Like on East Lansing Police Department, or under the?
And then maybe we can discuss that, as individuals. But we definitely are at our time, and unfortunately, I'll have to move to adjourn this meeting for the sake of the closed caption. Is there a second?
Support.
All right. So moved. I thank you everyone tonight for your time, and please follow up to Shelley again with the emails going forward to the specific stuff in regards to the police, and we will look to our next meeting. And thank you all. Take care.
Good job, Chuck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you.
Bye.
All done. 3 hours.